ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Offering our collective pranams at the divine lotus feet of Sadguru Sri Madhusudan Sai, revered founder of the Sri Sathya Sai University for Human Excellence. Respected board members, teachers, and all my dear brothers and sisters, good afternoon and a warm welcome to the session Words of Wisdom. I am Navya Sai, pursuing my Masters in English Literature. Today, we are immensely blessed and honored to welcome Swami Siddhartha Krishna ji, President of the Lalita Mahatripura Sundari Charitable Trust. On behalf of the entire fraternity of Sri Sathya Sai University for Human Excellence, we cordially invite you, Swamiji, to this wonderful forum of words of wisdom. To give a brief overview of our university, this esteemed university, deriving its motto from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam, perfection in action is yoga, strives to create academically competent individuals who at the same time are rooted in the ideals of spirituality. Swamiji, I am happy to share that our curriculum is a unique blend of not just Aparavidya but also Paravidya courses wherein we undertake scriptural studies such as Vedas, Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita. Furthermore, every academic year begins with a month-long Paravidya Shibira on diverse spiritual themes, enabling all of us to lead spiritually centered lives. I feel privileged to introduce Swami Siddhartha Krishna ji. Swamiji is the head of a spiritual retreat centers in the Himalayas, a versatile lecturer and writer. Swamiji has over 20 years of experience and is a skilled content editor and proofreader of yogic and Vedantic material. Swamiji has given wide-ranging lectures on topics such as yoga, Vedanta, Sankhya, and Vyakarana to students across India, Europe, Middle East, and China, to name a few. Swamiji has also translated many original texts and written original commentaries in Sanskrit, Hindi, and English. Swamiji's famous works include Ashtadhyayi Lalita Vritti, Hasta Malakiyam, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and Shiva Sankalpa Sutra. Swamiji is also the recipient of prestigious Yogi Shiromani Award. We welcome you, Swamiji. It is said in the Shikshavali of Taittiriya Upanishad, Swadhyaya Pravachanabhyam na Pramaditavyam. This is one among the parting advices that the Guru gives to his disciples, which translates to do not compromise or neglect self-study or propagation of the same. Svadhyaya, being one of the 5 rules of personal conduct or niyama of the Ashtanga Yoga, is crucial for effective study and internalization of any sacred scripture in one's own life. Today, Swamiji will be addressing on this topic, Svadhyaya. Over to you, Swamiji.
Thank you very much, Navya Saiji, for the wonderful introduction.
Thank you, sir.
And for having me on this occasion. Should we start with a short prayer from my side as well?
Yes, Swamiji.
Are we ready to start?
Yes, Swamiji.
Okay, perfect. Just one, am I clearly audible? Is my sound good enough?
Yes, Swamiji.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
Swamiji.
Thank you. So let's take a few moments to settle down. One of the meanings of Swadhyaya, as I will explain a little later, is also to observe oneself. And right now, this is what we are going to do for a few seconds, just to observe the physical, the material part of ourself, the body, the physical body. Use it as an instrument, the Annamaya Kosha, this outermost layer made of food, made of matter. Use it as an anchoring point to bring our attention back to ourselves. Om. Vishnurva tripurantako bhavatu va Brahma surendruthava Bhanurva shashalakshanoth bhagavan Buddhoth siddhothava Ragadvesha visharti moharahitah Satvanukam pudyato Yah sarvaihi Saha samskrito gunaganis Tasmai namaha sarvada. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. My humble salutations and pranams at the lotus feet of Sadguru Deva Sri Madhusudana Saiji Maharaj, and my humble pranams to all of you. My dear friends, it has been a great honor that I have been invited to speak to the students and teachers of Sri Sathya Sai University for Human Excellence, about which I have been hearing since quite a long time, hearing things like this is a place where modern education, as well as the ancient Gurukula system, of wisdom is combined. And this is precisely what I saw in the introduction provided by Navyaji, how Paravidya, as explained in the Mundaka Upanishad, Atha para yaya tadaksharam adhigamyate dve vidye veditavye iti yasmavid brahmavido vadanti. There are two types of vidyas which need to be studied, which need to be learned. And the higher one is the one with the help of which we explore the imperishable essence of our being. And I'm extremely delighted to know that you spend no less than a month every year just exploring Paravidya. This is a great fortune of all of us, made only possible by a true Sadguru like Sri Madhusudana Saiji Maharaj. So my deepest respect to him. The topic that I have been given is a Swadhyaya, one of the central teaching of the Vedas, because we just spoke of Paravidya, but the acquisition, the obtaining of Paravidya is impossible without practicing Swadhyaya. And that's why Swadhyaya is really one of the central aspects in the Vedic teachings. May it be the Shatapatha Brahmana of the Shukla Yajurveda, when it says Swadhyayo Adhyetavyaha. Everyone should do Swadhyaya. Or it may be the Aranyaka text, the forest text, the text that used to be studied and taught in forest-like, deeply peaceful, contemplative settings belonging to the Taittiriya branch of the Krishna Yajurveda, Swadhyayan ma pramadaha. Never, ever be negligent in Swadhyaya. And negligence or pramada, if we have the capacity, if we have the capability, if we have the time to do something, if we have the possibility of doing something, and if we don't do it, then that is called pramada in Sanskrit. That is negligence. So never ever should we be negligent when it comes to Swadhyaya. This is part of what was just right now in the introduction. The parting teachings, Veda manuchya acharyo antevasina manushasti. After the teachings of the Vedas were complete, and the student who was living with the teacher, with the master, because that is what antevasin means, someone who lives close by, someone who lives with the teacher. Another word for a shishya, for a student in Sanskrit. So now when the student has decided to go back home to his parents, to his mother, to his father, there is this beautiful section in the Taittiriya Upanishad. And there, along with many other beautiful points, the teacher, the master, emphasizes on the importance of Swadhyaya. Now, but what is the meaning of Swadhyaya? What does it mean? When we look at the Vedic and yogic literature, we come across three primary meanings of the word Swadhyaya. The first meaning is japa. Japa can mean a repetition of a mantra, such as repeating a mantra again and again, repeating it can be the Gayatri mantra, Om Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. To repeat it again and again with the help of a mala, which has 108 beads. So at least repeating it 108 times, or Mahamrityunjaya mantra. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityur Mukshiyamamritat. Repeating this mantra. This is also a form of Swadhyaya. Dwadashakshara mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Repeating it again and again. Shodashakshara mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare, etc. Or the mantra that we receive from our Sadguru, and ultimately the king of all mantras, Mantra Raja, Pranava, Omkara, Om, repetition of Om. All of this is a form of japa, and therefore is a form of Swadhyaya, because the first meaning of Swadhyaya is japa. This is the easiest form of Swadhyaya. We just need to learn one mantra, learn to pronounce it correctly, and then we can repeat it. And such repetition leaves a lasting impression of the mantra on the mind. This is the first form of japa, and therefore a form of Swadhyaya. There is another form of japa. When we recite a complete text, not just one mantra 108 times, but the whole text, or a bigger section of a text. For example, chanting the Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Jape Viniyogaha. If you look, Karanyasa, Hridayadinyasa, there the word japa has also been used in the sense of chanting. So the second meaning of japa is chanting. Chanting a text which contains sacred instructions, instructions about the deepest core of our being, instructions about the deeper aspects of our beings. It could be the Vedas, it could be the Upanishads, it could be the Bhagavad Gita, it could be the teachings of the great masters. Now, this type of japa is a little bit more difficult than the previous one, because one needs to learn many more verses. Even just the recitation of the whole Bhagavad Gita requires a student to learn the correct pronunciation of all the 700 verses. Again, such chanting of a text deeply imprints the text on our minds. My respected Pitaji made me chant the whole Bhagavad Gita for around 16 years. Every single day I had to recite the whole Bhagavad Gita to him, no matter where we were. And this, I consider this as the greatest blessing that I received from him, because that has deeply imprinted the Bhagavad Gita not only onto my conscious mind, but onto my subconscious and even unconscious layers of my mind. But chanting too, which is again a form of japa, is the preliminary meaning of Swadhyaya. The first meaning of Swadhyaya is repetition of a mantra or chanting of a text. When I was interacting with Chinese scholars, I came to know that the translations into Chinese language of Indian Sanskrit texts that were prepared around 6th century AD, which means 1400 years ago, mostly translate the word Swadhyaya with the Chinese equivalent, which means chanting. Chanting a text, chanting a sutra, chanting a sukta, a Vedic hymn. All of that is a form of Swadhyaya, and a very beautiful meditative form of Swadhyaya. When we, for example, chant the whole Bhagavad Gita, especially when we chant it from memory, the kind of focus, single-pointed focus that we attain while chanting the Bhagavad Gita for 1.5 or 2 hours in full speed is an opportunity for the mind to be absolutely focused, and the mind cannot go anywhere else. There is absolute ekagrata, absolute single-pointedness. So also it's a beautiful preparation for deeper and higher practices of Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya, which means meditation also. So I come now to the next meaning. The next meaning of Swadhyaya is study. That is how Shankaracharya, in his commentary on the Taittiriya Upanishad, he explains Swadhyaya as Swadhyaya Adhyayanam. Swadhyaya means Adhyayana. Adhyayana means study. And this includes a proper, a thorough study of the teachings, of the sacred teachings, such as the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma Sutra, the teachings of the great masters. A proper study includes Shravana and Manana. Shravana, which means listening to the meaning of those texts. And we should not forget that Shravana, Manana, and I will come back to Nididhyasana a little bit later, comes in the context of trying to understand one's true nature. This is the context in which Maharshi Yajnavalkya talks about Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana to his beloved wife, Maitreyi, who did not want the wealth of her husband, but was more interested in the wisdom and the knowledge that he had to offer. What a glorious past that was of our country, when such sisters, such mothers, such wives did walk on this sacred earth. So when he says, Atmavare drashtavyaha, are, this is a particle which indicates endearment. Are Maitreyi, Atmavare drashtavyaha. The purpose of life should be explored, should be to experience this innermost core of our being, this imperishable aspect of our being, this Chaitanya, Atma Chaitanya, this consciousness, the light, Atma Jyoti, the light, which illuminates our mind, our intellect, our senses. They illuminate their objects with the light of consciousness. So to be able to experience and become aware of this innermost essence of our being, the first thing that we need to do is Shrutavya. We need to do Shravana. We need to listen to the teachings of the masters in which they have described their own experience of this innermost essence. And not only listen the teaching, but also understand it. So that's why commentators on Shankaracharya such as Anandagiri explain that Shravana ends with understanding the meaning of the teaching. Arthavabodha paryanta. Arthavabodha. So that the artha, the purpose, the meaning has been understood. Shravana lasts till that point. And then after that, after we have understood the meaning of the teachings, then the next step, which is also part of Adhyayana, which is also part of this second stage of Swadhyaya, is Manana. Manana, which means critical analysis. Critically question the meaning which we have understood. It's not questioning the text itself. It's not the questioning of the experience, but am I understanding it properly? This is a combination between doubting and having faith. On one side, we have tremendous faith that our Sadguru, our master, our rishis and our munis have absolutely spoken what is Shrat. Shrat in Shraddha. Shrat means the truth. Shraddha means to accept it as the truth. Shrat means, in fact, the Sanskrit word Shrat in Shraddha is an extremely ancient word, and it has even gone to Latin and Greek, and that's why it has gone into English, and therefore words like credible, the C-R-E-D, shred, credible, credit, creed. If you look at the derivation of these words in English, you realize that they actually have been derived from the word Shrat, about which Maharshi Yaska in Nirukta tells us, Shraditi Satyanama. Shrat is a name of Satya, truth. Like in the name of our esteemed master, Sathya Sai. Shrat has exactly the same meaning. So on one side, we receive the teachings with Shraddha, with faith that this is the truth. But this doesn't mean that we don't question it. Even Bhagavan Sri Krishna in the Gita, tad vidhi, understand or receive that wisdom by what? Pranipatena, first thing, by bowing down in front of our masters, which indicates Shraddha, that there is Shraddha. I am putting down my own ego of omniscience, which is, by the way, extremely important when doing Swadhyaya. If we think that we know, if we think that I know this, the moment we think this, we have closed our windows, and then no amount of wisdom can enter us. Appaya Dikshita is a great Vedantin from South India, a great name. And he said something very, very beautiful. Nitijyaha, niyatijyaha, api bhavanti shastrajyaha. It is easy to find people who will tell you what is right and what is wrong. It is also easy to find people who will tell you what is your future. It is even easy to find scholars who have studied and explored the Shastras. Brahmajya api sulabha. It is even easy to find individuals who have understood Brahman, the quintessence of the Vedas, the quintessence of the Upanishads, Brahman, the fundamental principle of this universe. It might be easy to find them, but svajnana jnanino viralaha, those who know their own ignorance, they are extremely rare. And I always love this definition of Bhagavan. We use the word Bhagavan, but the definition of it provided by Vishnu Purana, Vetti Vidyam Avidyam cha Savachyo Bhagavaniti. A person, not only a person who knows his knowledge, Vidya, but also knows his avidya, his ignorance, one who is fully aware of his wisdom as well as of his ignorance. Savachyo Bhagavaniti. Such a person should be called Bhagavan. So the moment we become aware of our ignorance, we become humble. And that is the sign of tremendous wisdom, because there are so many rahasyas, so many mysteries in this universe itself. There are so many mysteries that not everything can be understood. All we can understand about those mysteries is that we become aware of their presence, but would never know. That is what we find in Kenopanishad. Navidmo navijanimo yathaitadanushishyaat. We don't know. And we don't know how to even teach it. That is what the Upanishadic masters are saying about Anyadeva tadviditat. This essence is different from the known as well as from the unknown. It's not unknown, but it is also. And that's why then when the teacher asks his student, have you understood what I taught you? If the student answers, yes, I have fully understood it. Yadimanyase suvedeti. If you think that you have manyete viditam, I still believe that you still have understood it, only little. Go back and contemplate on it. So when we bow down in front of our masters, it is a symbol of shedding this bhranti, of omniscience, that we know everything, and thus we become receptive to wisdom. That's why Bhagavan Sri Krishna, in the context of Swadhyaya, he speaks of pranipata, bowing down in front of our teachers, and then the second thing, and that is where the combination of both having respect, but at the same time also critically analyzing the teaching, asking questions is so important. Pariprashnena, pariprashna. And look at the word. We only know prashna. Prashna means a question, but Bhagavan Sri Krishna uses the upasarga, the prefix pari. Pari means from all sides. Asking questions from all sides. That is manana. Because we are trying to understand what is being taught. So we ask questions from all sides to make sure that we have understood the words in the same spirit in which they were spoken. That is the biggest pitfall of receiving teachings. If we receive the teaching which has been imparted from a very high level, when we understand it from our own level, then we cannot grasp the essence behind those words. And what needs to be grasped in Swadhyaya is not just the words, that is Shravana. But then the deeper essence can only be grasped when we do manana, when we critically analyze it, when we ask questions. And that's why texts like the Brahma Sutram starts with Athato Brahma Jidyasa, Jidyasa, the desire to know, the desire to understand. So, Shravana of Paravidya and Manana of Paravidya, and of course with that of Aparavidya as well. Whatever we are studying, they are all manifestations of Ma Saraswati, Ma Sharadamba. All forms of wisdom are manifestation of that Divine Mother. Call her Sharadamba, call her one of the Ashtalakshmis, Vidya Lakshmi. It doesn't matter. So this is the second meaning of Swadhyaya. And the third meaning of Swadhyaya is self-study. Self-study in the sense of self-observation and self-investigation in meditation. Now this has nothing to do with texts, with teachings, but it is really observing oneself. Asmal lokat pretya etamannamayamaatmanamupasankramya Vendataitariya Upanishad. Dying to this world, which means withdrawing one's attention from this world, and a person approaches the Annamaya Kosha and observes what is happening in the physical body. And then goes deeper, approaches the Pranamaya Kosha, the layer of the 5 breaths, Prana, Apana, Vyana, Samana, and Udana, and observes their activities in the body. And thus withdraws one's attention from the physical body by focusing one's attention on the breath layer of our being, and then withdrawing one's attention from the breath layer, from the layer of the breath, and focusing one's attention on the stream of thoughts, manas, sankalpa, vikalpa, which is continuously going on in our mind, just to peacefully observe that. After remaining completely attentive. And like this, traveling through the deeper layer, Anandamaya Kosha, and ultimately reaching, observing all these layers, and then feel the presence of the observer only by discarding everything that is being observed, and being with one's attention completely with the one that is observing everything. Those are the deepest layers of Swadhyaya, and those are the deepest layers of Nididhyasana. My Sadgurudeva used to say that Swadhyaya becomes Nididhyasana after Shravana and Manana has been performed thoroughly. Swadhyaya very naturally becomes Nididhyasana. That is when Smriti, and Smriti in the sense of mindfulness, in the higher sense, not merely in the sense of memory, but in the sense of mindfulness, in the higher sense in the sense in which the Buddha uses the word in his teachings on mindfulness, satipatthana, in the sense in which Patanjali uses in the Yoga Sutras, smrityupasthana, in that sense, then smriti, self-awareness, atmanubhuti. It doesn't matter which word we use, but that arises. That is the highest layer of Swadhyaya. That is the highest layer of self-study. And therefore, one of the Upanishads, Maitreya Upanishad, summarizes these three layers of Swadhyaya. The lowest layer of Swadhyaya is contemplating one mantra, which I called japa, or simply reciting the mantras from the Vedas. That is the lowest level of Swadhyaya. The intermediate level of Swadhyaya is to contemplate the teachings, the scriptures, the shastras, the instructions. That is what shastra means, instructions. Instructions of the great masters. To contemplate, to listen to them, analyze them. All of this comes in the intermediate level of Swadhyaya, and the highest level of Swadhyaya is to contemplate the essence, the quintessence, not only of those teachings, the quintessence of our own being, because the quintessence of those teachings is the quintessence of our being. That is what tattva, tattva chintana, tattva means the very essence of something. Tattva chintana. So the Upanishad says, Uttama tattva chintaiva, the highest, the supreme, the greatest form of Swadhyaya, the very essence of the teachings, which is also the very essence of our own being. And then Madhyamam Shastra Chintana, the intermediate form of Swadhyaya is Shastra Chintana, contemplating the Shastras. And Adhama Mantra Chintacha, the lowest form of Swadhyaya, is repeating, chanting mantras. Now, higher and lower simply means that the lower one is a preparation for the higher one, and therefore needs to be done first as a preparation to prepare oneself. So the first level of Swadhyaya needs to be practiced to repeat mantras hundreds and thousands of times. We need to chant the scriptures so that we can understand them and assimilate them. And then when we study their meaning, we study their significance, that enables us to assimilate it. So the lower is simply, there's nothing high or low, other than the lower one is simply a preparation for the higher one. The Vedas list beautiful benefits of Swadhyaya. Now just focusing on the second one, which means studying and understanding the meaning of the teachings. The Shatpat Brahmana says that someone who loves to do Swadhyaya, someone for whom Swadhyaya is a source of pleasure, yuktamana bhavati, his mind becomes endowed with single-pointedness, ekagramana. Yuktamana means ekagramana. It is the past participle of yoga. Yoga very naturally arises in his mind. Therefore, Swadhyaya is a means also to acquire yoga and meditation. Yoga means meditation. Yoga samadhi. Vyasa is very clear. When we use the word yoga in the yogic literature, we always mean the deeper states of single-pointedness, which comes when we do Swadhyaya. It's the preliminary training of meditation. Aparadhina. A person who knows how to do swadhyaya can remain on his own. He is not dependent on others. It is like opening our own eyes. So we don't have to depend on someone else's eyes, because swadhyaya opens our prajna chakshu, our jnana chakshu. Our eyes of wisdom are opened by swadhyaya. So we don't depend on someone else's eyes of wisdom. We can see it for ourselves. Ahara tan sadhayate. Every day he attains whatever wholesome he desires in his life. And I love this. Sukham swapiti. Someone who does swadhyaya every day, he sleeps peacefully, completely relaxed. Paramachikitsaka atmano bhavati. He becomes the best chikitsaka, the best healer of himself. If we want to heal ourselves, swadhyaya is a wonderful practice. Indriya sanyamascha, the taming of the senses, comes with swadhyaya. Ekaramata, delight in solitude. What would we do in solitude? We would run away from solitude. I see this living in the Himalayas. So many people come to the Himalayas and then stay for a few days and then run away because they cannot remain in solitude. Without swadhyaya, it is impossible. It is impossible. And the last thing that the Brahmana, the Shatpad Brahmana also says is lokapaktihi. Lokapaktihi, which means it enables us to accomplish the task of improving loka, to improving the society, which is what Bhagavan Shri Krishna refers to as loka sangraha in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita in the context of karma yoga, which was the purpose of all the actions of great saints and sages such as Krishna, Shankaracharya, Sathya Sai. When they are here to improve the society. This capacity comes from swadhyaya. And that's why the masters say that yantiva apaha, like water flows continuously. Eti aditya, the sun travels continuously. Eti chandrama, the moon travels continuously. Yanti nakshatrani, all these stars, they travel continuously. What would happen if any one of these would stop traveling? If water stops flowing, it becomes stagnant. It starts to become smelly, dirty. If these luminaries in the sky would stop traveling, the universe would collapse. That is what happens on that day when we don't do swadhyaya. Evam haiva tadahar brahmano bhavati. The scholar of the Vedas becomes like that. Yadaha swadhyayam nadhite. On the day when he does not get an opportunity to do swadhyaya, swadhyaya needs to be performed every day. This is the reason why Patanjali is mentioned in the beginning by the esteemed scholar, that swadhyaya has been included by Patanjali in one of his niyamas, something that needs to be done every day, lifelong, for the rest of our life. Having said all of this, I also would want to add that not only studying, but also practical application of that study is tremendous importance. That is what brings depth, true depth to our study, when we test it in our lives. And that's why Bhagavan Parashara, the father of Maharshi Veda Vyasa, in his teachings to Khandikya in Vishnu Purana, says this beautifully, that Swadhyaya Yogamasita. Go deeper into your meditation, into your yoga, into your practice with the help of Swadhyaya. And Yogat Swadhyaya Mamanit. And deepen your Swadhyaya, deepen your study with the help of practical application into meditation. So a combination of both Swadhyaya, Yoga Sampatya, when both are combined, Swadhyaya, studying, as well as practice, when both are combined, then Paramatma Prakashate, then this higher self, the true nature of our being, gets revealed to us. This is why he compares Swadhyaya, study, and practice as the two eyes by which this innermost essence can be seen. Tadikshanaya Swadhyaya Chakshuhu Yogaha Tatha Aparam. To see that Brahman, to see that Paramatman, Swadhyaya is one eye, and the practical application of it is the other eye. Namamsa chakshusha drashtum brahma bhutaha sa shakyate. That Brahman, that supreme essence, cannot be seen with these eyes made of flesh. It can only be seen by cultivating these two eyes, Swadhyaya as well as the practical application of it. So having said this, since the sole purpose of Swadhyaya is to extract the essence of the teachings of the masters, once that essence has been extracted, the Upanishads say that to reach the highest level of Swadhyaya, the third level of Swadhyaya, even the scriptures have to be left behind. It is like a honey bee, after it has extracted the honey, leaves the flower. Palalami vadhanyarthi tyajed grantham asheshatah, in Brahma Bindu Upanishad, that once you have removed the grain, then the husk becomes meaningless. The husk is discarded. So once the essence of the teachings has been grasped and internalized, then scriptures become like husk. And that is then the third level of Swadhyaya, after a person has internalized the teachings and he follows the dhyana patha, the meditative path. That is the highest level. One last thing that I would like to mention is, before I conclude this session, how to know that our Swadhyaya has been successful. What is the sign? There are two signs that we find. Is our Swadhyaya successful? And is it on the right track? Two things. The first is a saying of sage Vidura to King Dhritarashtra, where he says, Swadhitasya, the sign that something has been studied properly is that tasyante sukha medhate. At the end of Swadhyaya, we should feel light. We should feel happy. We should feel inspired. We should feel utsahita, encouraged. We should feel tremendously positive. We should feel tremendously energetic. If this has happened, then it is a sign that we studied well. That is the answer that sage Vidura, one of the greatest sages in the Mahabharata, gives to King Dhritarashtra in the Mahabharata. And is our Swadhyaya going into the correct direction? A lot can be said about this. How to know that our Swadhyaya is going into the correct direction. But in very simple terms, if it fosters narrow-mindedness, then there is a problem with the Swadhyaya. Then the Swadhyaya, something is on the wrong track. But if it opens our heart, if it inspires us to embrace everybody, like the Upanishad says, Ayam nijaha paroveti, Mahopanishad. This person belongs to me, this person doesn't. This is the consideration of those who have a tiny little heart. But Udara Charitanamtu, those who have a vast heart, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole Vasudha becomes like a family. So the purpose of Swadhyaya is to open the heart so that it can receive everybody with open arms. But if it fosters narrow-mindedness, then there is a problem. It should foster open-mindedness. That is what Sage Gaudapa in his Karikas on Mandukya Upanishad, when he speaks of freeing oneself from opposition towards other views. This is when Brahma Bindu Upanishad speaks of treating scriptures as cows of different shades and colors, while recognizing that the milk, the essence of every teaching, of every master is the same. When we do Swadhyaya, when our Swadhyaya is on the right track, we recognize that no matter which cow I investigate, no matter what her color is, the milk, the essence will always be white, radiantly bright. It will always be radiant. So it doesn't matter which scripture I investigate, but when I look at the essence, then it will be sweet like madhu, and it will be radiant like the milk of the cow. This recognition leads us to open-mindedness. I will conclude my address with expressing special thanks to the administration and team from Sri Sathya Sai University of Human Excellence. My immense gratitude to all of you who are present here. Special thanks also to Sri Bhupal Chidambarji for bringing us together. And I offer this humble offering at the lotus feet of Sadguru Sri Madhusudan Saiji Maharaj. My humble prostrations to all of you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Swamiji. We have few questions from various other campuses. So
Yes.
Shall we proceed forward?
Perfectly fine, perfectly fine.
This question is from a teacher. We
Yes.
often immerse ourselves in the profound discourses delivered by Sadguru Sri Madhusudan Sai and other esteemed masters. However, is merely listening to these discourses sufficient, or should we also engage in the study of Upanishad texts daily?
What these masters teach us is from the Upanishads. It is their own experience of the Upanishads. Going back to the sources is always extremely beneficial, and therefore that is the whole idea of exploring Paravidya, because Paravidya is found, I would say that exploring the Upanishads is of tremendous importance, because it is only I see this, for example, in the context of the Bhagavad Gita. The true depth of the Bhagavad Gita gets revealed when we look at the Bhagavad Gita with a vision received from the Upanishads. And I would say the same thing, that when we listen to the teachings of great masters such as Sadguru Deva, the true depth can be appreciated only by us. The true depth of their teachings can be appreciated only by us when we look at their teachings from a mind which is well informed by the Upanishads, by the Bhagavad Gita, by the texts. Then we can appreciate the immense depth of their teachings. So I would say that there is, even just to understand the immense experiential depth from which our Sadgurus are coming, we need to explore texts like the Upanishads. That is my humble view, but of course, masters would know better.
Thank you, Swamiji. The next question is, Swamiji, you mentioned the importance of chanting the Gita and other sacred texts. However, sometimes it feels like a routine activity. How can we infuse our daily prayers with renewed energy and passion, maintaining their significance each day?
Routine activity, this word gives a sense of boredom, and I have gone through this, so I very well know what this means. When we do something again and again, we become used to it, and our mind at some point says, enough of it. Let's stop it for a while. This boredom, what I have understood, is that this boredom comes when we repeat with the mind wandering here and there. But if we repeat with complete ekagrata, every day through repetition of those verses, something new gets revealed to us. So, for example, if I'm repeating the Bhagavad Gita, just chanting Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samavetayo Yutsavaha Mamakah Pandavaschaiva Kima Kurvata Sanjaya, and my mind is wandering here and there. My mind wants to wander here and there, but my recitation of the Bhagavad Gita is keeping me bound, and we don't like bondage. So we will not like. As long as my mind is also not with my chanting or with my repetition, and my mind is running here and there, this task at hand will appear boring. But if with some practice, and this requires practice, I agree, it requires abhyasa. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grushyate, like Bhagavan Sri Krishna says. It requires some level of abhyasa, repeated practice. Like we need practice to ride a bicycle, we need practice to walk a tight rope, otherwise we fall on both sides. Keeping the mind focused on the task at hand requires practice, and it also requires some level of non-attachment, non-clinging on objects. That's why Patanjali Abhyasa Vairagya Abhyam Tannirodha, the mind becomes focused with a combination of Abhyasa and Vairagya. Krishna says the same thing in the 6th chapter. Once we acquire a little level, a small level, a tiny little level of concentration on what we are chanting, then believe me, every day when we come back to the text that we are chanting, something new gets revealed. We notice a pearl or a jewel in the text, which we didn't notice earlier. And so every day it's new revelation. And that is when we start. It does not remain a routine task, but it is a new learning experience. And that's why one of the Vaidika mantras from the Rig Veda, I love this mantra, Utatvaha Pashyannada Darshavajam. There are some students who, seeing the teachings, see it not. Utatvaha Pashyannada Darshavajam, Utatvaha Shrinvan Nashrinoti Enam. Some others hearing it don't hear it. Utotvasmai Tanvim Visasre. But it is someone to whom the teachings reveal themselves. And as a result, what happens is Ashcharyavat Pashyati, like in the second chapter, Bhagavan Shri Krishna says, when he looks at those teachings, he looks at them with amazement. Amazement comes when we find something new in the depth of those teachings. Ashcharyavat Pashyati Kashchidenam, Ashcharyavat Vadati Tathaiva Chanya. I mean, I have spoken so many times on Swadhyaya, and just today, I noticed something that I may have spoken earlier, but was not relevant to my level. And today, maybe because I have reached that level in my life, that has become more relevant. And it is today that I notice and I realize, oh, this is what I need to change in my life. So even though I've spoken about Swadhyaya so many times, every time I speak about such things, every time I speak about a shloka of the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads or the Brahma Sutra, there is always something new for me also. And then it does not remain a routine task. Then it becomes a task in which we discover something new routinely. And then it's no more boring. So we have to bring that, that's why I spoke of removing this bhrama of knowing everything and improving our receptivity, opening our windows like Adiguru Dattatreya. Then we realize that wisdom is all around us, and that is when wisdom enters, and then we deeply enjoy. That is the answer that comes to my mind right now.
Thank you, Swamiji. The next question is, Swamiji, you mentioned how can we effectively identify?
I could not hear the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Yes,
there was
Swamiji.
some. Yes, please. Thank you.
Swamiji, you mentioned the importance of recognizing our own ignorance. How can we effectively identify and acknowledge our areas of ignorance?
Yes. That is what self-observation is about. When we see someone who is absolutely ignorant, it is like, that is the biggest problem with ignorance actually, avidya. The greatest problem with avidya is that darkness, if we would be in darkness forever and would have never experienced light, we would not even know that we are in darkness. It is a ray of light when it pierces through darkness, and when we experience light, it is then that we recognize darkness. We come to understand darkness. We need to experience the opposite. So when we have the first glimpse of knowledge, the first glimpse of wisdom, and then under the impression of that glimpse, those first glimpses of wisdom, when we come back to ourselves and observe ourselves and realize that a lot in ourselves is still lacking, and that comes with humbleness, Vinaya. That's why Vinaya is so important. We realize that that we lack this, and I'm trying to remember something that Abhinavagupta, the 10th century master of Kashmir Shaiva Darshana, said in his preface to his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. he asks a very interesting question, that why do all these spiritual teachings start with a conflict between devas and asuras? You see this, for example, in the Upanishads, in Chandogya Upanishad. The Chandogya Upanishad in the very beginning mentions the conflict between the devas and asuras. In the Bhagavad Gita, you see the conflict of the Kauravas and Pandavas. The teachings of Ramayana, Mahabharata, all have this conflict of between devas and asuras. He says that his explanation there is that the asuras, which symbolize ignorance, and devas, which symbolize wisdom, Vidya Sanghatta. He explains this as a conflict between ignorance and darkness. As we receive the first teachings from our masters and we imbibe it, we internalize it, it starts conflicting with the ignorance that is there. And then what arises, the sparks that arise as a result of this conflict, those are questions. Those are the questions which then inspire a teacher to teach more. Otherwise, the masters say, na prishtam kasyachit bruyat, till you are not asked, don't speak. Speak only when you have been asked to speak. That's the decorum. So when the question, the pariprashna, questions arise. So if we are not asking questions, then it means that we have failed to recognize our ignorance. Asking questions itself, and the moment we ask questions, then the teachings, Arjuna asked questions, Krishna spoke. When the Upanishadic students ask questions, it is then that the masters impart the wisdom. So that is the result. The question arises as a result of this conflict between the ray of light and the perpetual darkness that is there in our heart. Recognition of that requires constant self-analysis, atma-manthana, observation of oneself in the light of new information. I can't think of any other way.
Thank you, Swamiji. Coming to the last question. Is Guru important for Swadhyaya, as we may misunderstand the scriptures without our knowledge?
Yes, Guru as a pointer, as someone who points in the correct direction, particularly in the initial stages, it is always extremely beneficial to have a living guide. Gukarastvandhakarasya dhrukarastteja uchyate. Ultimately, Gu means darkness, Ru means light. Light itself is the greatest Guru. The light of wisdom itself is the greatest Guru. And whoever has already cultivated that light of wisdom has that light of wisdom in his or her own life, can then also lead us on that path from tamasoma jyotir gamaya. So yes, Guru is, that's why Bhagavan Sri Krishna, tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. And the Upanishads, acharyavan purusho veda, it is only someone guided by a proper acharya, by a proper guide. And acharya is someone who practices himself. The Puranas beautifully explain it. Acharati, someone who practices it, who has practiced it in his own life, his or her own life, and therefore knows not only the theoretical aspect of the teachings, but really the practical, detailed aspect of the teachings through his own experience. The guidance of such a person in every field, in every practical field, whether, for example, even after, would we want to get operated by a doctor who comes and tells us, well, I have read all the books that are required on this topic, but I have never performed the operation myself under the guidance of a skilled doctor. We need to learn the practical steps, not merely by reading books, but really by practicing the skill and honing our skill, refining our skill under the guidance of those who have already refined it. And since in all practical fields, a human master is of tremendous importance, similarly to understand the Upanishads. That's why Bhagavan Shankaracharya in his commentary on the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Shastra Vidapi, Asampradayavit, someone who has not received the teaching through a lineage, through a continuous lineage of teachers and students. And even if he has studied all the Shastras, but has not received the Shastras through an unbroken lineage, he should be neglected as if he knows nothing. That is what Shankaracharya, why there is so much importance on Sampradaya. Sampradaya does not mean sect. That is a modern meaning given to the word. Sampradaya simply means Guru Parampara, an unbroken lineage of masters through which the practical wisdom travels down. And to receive that, we need to go into the presence of a Sadguru. That is the importance of Sadguru, also to understand the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas.
Thank you, Swamiji, for your enlightening words. Today's session has helped us understand the various dimensions and levels of Swadhyaya, ranging from Mantra Swadhyaya or Japa to Shastra Swadhyaya, and ultimately internalizing the quintessence of the scripture, the Tattva Swadhyaya. We have truly understood that Swadhyaya is a fundamental practice that a sadhaka must acquaint oneself with to understand the ultimate truth. Once again, I thank you on behalf of the entire university for your valuable insights. Swamiji, we also take this opportunity to invite you to this university, which is a 40-minute drive from the Bangalore airport. Thank you, Swamiji. We shall end the session with Shanti Mantra, Sahana Vavatu.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you very much. My humble salutations to each one.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Namo Namaha, Namo Namaha, Namo Namaha. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram.